it's Laurie. I hope this video finds you all well and healthy and happy wherever you are in the world today. I am doing day 4 of Ethony's 31 Days of Tarot. Day 4 is the top 5 tarot books of 2017, either books that we purchased or that were released in 2017. My choice for the very first book is Tarot on Earth by the tarot community's very own Tom Benjamin. So yeah, I'm really excited about it. I've been working through it, and I'm not that far. I think I'm just into about maybe the 3rd chapter, something like that, but there's all my notes. And anyway, yeah, it looks great. I'm super glad I bought it, and I look forward to using it all through 2018 as well. So that's definitely book number 1 for me. And the second book I'm going to talk about is a book called The Spirit of Herbs by Michael Tierra. And it's actually the accompanying book to the Herbal Tarot. Herbal Tarot itself is pretty much a standard Rider-Waite-Smith deck that has been redrawn to include herbs. I suppose technically you don't need the deck if you don't want the deck, but there are a lot of good reasons to have the deck as well. The real prize, I feel like, is the book, because of the depth of information that it covers. So I just want to show you. This is the back of the artist card. So what you get in each section is a multi-page set of information about the card. You get a little picture of the card here. And then you get information such as, okay, so this is the World card, which is my card for 2018. And it talks about things like what the card depicts. For instance, this card depicts our potential to manifest spirit on earth. It talks about the things that you actually see in the card, in the drawing, why they drew it the way that they did. And then, as you can see, there's quite a bit about that. Well, I'll read you a little bit. It is the individualized life force that gains self-conscious awareness through the limitations of time and space and combined by elements. We can see ourselves through our creations. If we can see ourselves in the things around us as the life force manifested, then there is nowhere else that we need to be except right here, right now, dancing to the rhythm of life. And then they turn to the herb that each card is assigned. In this case, it's comfrey. And it talks about spiritual properties of comfrey, seeing the segments and putting them together to create a whole, how to meditate with either the herb or the card. So one reason to have the deck is that if you are like me, I like plants. I have a black thumb. I tend to kill them at this stage of my life. It just isn't one of my skills. So hey ho. And so you can actually meditate with the card instead of with the herb, because the card holds the energy. These cards all hold the energy of the herb. So that's nice if you don't have the herb, as I said. It gives medicinal properties that you can use this herb for, or also the card, meditating with the card, the dosage and preparation if you actually have the herb. It says, when doing meditations with the card, visualize the self joyfully dancing on the beach with the elements of creativity. That sounds quite nice. There's certain, warnings and things like that when not to take it, and all sorts of things that the herb is good for. Some keywords. There's an affirmation for this particular card. I just wrote some notes down there. And then herbal allies, which means other herbs that you can use alongside comfrey, so asparagus root and marshmallow root, for example. So the book is really chock full of very useful, helpful information, particularly for someone like me who is not that familiar with the plants themselves, or that's why I have the deck, because I don't have any of the plants themselves. Okay, I'm gonna pop a picture in here of the cover because I read it on my Kindle. I bought this book, Dirty and Divine, and another book called Witch, and I'm trying to remember who wrote that. I read those over the summer. Both Dirty and Divine and Witch, the book called Witch, were written by 30-something British millennial women. I read the book, and to me, I'll be honest with you, it felt like the author of Dirty and Divine kind of wrote it as a way to cope with her husband's depression, his lack of presence in the family and kind of in their marriage, and her lack of fulfillment in her life. She was struggling with the day-to-day of being a mother of a baby and I think a toddler who got a lot of colds, and they were crabby a lot. And I suspect that anybody who either lived that and it's still, really fresh in their mind, or is living that right now, might find the book really helpful and really validating. It didn't really thrill me, and that's just me. Not every book is for every person, and obviously that wasn't I'm not the target audience for that book. I do like the concept of living a tarot card a day. That was actually an assignment in one of the tarot courses that I took last year or the year before. No, I think I took the course in 2016. So it's a really neat exercise of living a card a day. Okay, the fourth book is also a Kindle book, so I'm going to pop the picture in right here. And that one's called Magic on the Breath by a woman called Tethluin Penry. Her first name is Welsh, and I know I didn't say that right, but Mrs. Penry is a solitary pagan witch, and she has a YouTube channel, which is called by her name, Tethluin Penry. I quite like the channel. I know this technically isn't about about channels that you want to watch. It technically doesn't have anything to do with tarot. But I really enjoy her little talks, as she calls them. They're just maybe 5 or 6 minutes long each, where she just sits there in her kitchen and her dogs are all around her, and she just kind of talks about the things that she has learned over her life or that she understands, and she answers questions. And it's I like the videos. They feel like visiting with a neighbor who is sharing her wisdom. But this book specifically talks about breathing as a way to create intention, or to use in kind of a magical way, or to use as an intention way. Mrs. Penry has written other books that I've also bought that I look forward to reading. In one about not magic, that's KNOT magic, and a few others. So I look forward to reading those in 2018. I will put the information for her channel and her blog and her website and everything below. Okay, so the last and final book I'm going to talk about is, I might have to move everything to get this in here. It's The Great Big Coffee Table Deviant Moon by Patrick Valenza. Let me see if I can adjust. So what happened was, I think I talked about this in one of my previous videos, but I've never been particularly attracted to the artwork from the Deviant Moon. I did very much like the Mildred Payne Oracle, and I bought that, I believe, in August when it was released. I very much liked that, but I didn't really think I liked the Deviant Moon. It looked scary, or it looked creepy, and it really didn't appeal to me. And I talked a little bit about this in an earlier video about tarot. And at some point, I think maybe in September, I was watching someone's YouTube channel? I want to say it was probably Two Spirits Simon, but I can't remember for sure, who was talking about their own experience with the Deviant Moon. And I decided that I was just going to purchase this big book. And the reason I thought I would purchase the book was because I had seen that it had the full-size pictures of the cards in it. I mean, this is my hand, so this is how big these images are. They're, I don't know how many times as big as a tarot card, but much, much bigger than the cards themselves. So I knew they'd have the great big images, so I would be able to see them, and then I would be able to read the story behind each and every card, including the background and things like that. So I got the book in the mail in the morning, and the kids and I were just about to leave to go on a drive across town. I had an appointment. And I opened up the book, and I just started to kind of read out loud. We had about 10 minutes or so before we had to leave. And I started to read, a lifelong journey. Most tarot enthusiasts have a personal story about how they discovered their first deck. Mine began in the mid-70s. When I was about 9 years old, I was at a typical suburban shopping mall with my parents. The mall had an obscure corridor hidden at the end that resembled a French Tudor-style village. I enjoyed walking around this dark and quaint section because it made me feel as if I was somehow going back through time. As my parents and I went inside one of the shops to browse, I caught sight of a small box of cards picturing the strangest medieval characters. It was love at first sight. I knew right then and there I needed to possess whatever lay hidden inside that mystical cardboard box. Although I begged my parents to buy me a deck, I ended up leaving the store empty-handed that day. They could not see why a child needed to have a tarot deck. But despite their objections, I remained persistent. After a few weeks, my parents gave in to my pleading and took me back to the mall to get my deck. I chose the one I thought had the most interesting artwork, which I believed to be the Swiss 1JJ Tarot. Elated, I ripped the box open before we even left the store. To my disappointment, I found my new deck was in French. I adored the illustrations, but I wanted to know the name of every mesmerizing character in the deck. We exchanged it for the less ornate Tarot Classic deck, which was in English, so I could study it, and I could not have found the tarot at a better time in my life. I was young, full of imagination, and extremely intuitive. During those years I had many strange dreams and premonitions. I also had dozens of vivid memories that I felt I had been born with. These visions demanded to be expressed in some way or other. Tarot inevitably became my creative outlet. He goes on to tell the story of being a very, very creative child who had a lot of interesting dreams and began drawing what he saw. So the story of the deck begins when he's a little boy and he has nightmares, and he begins drawing to confront his nightmares. This one, for instance, is called Abducted by the Man and Carried into the Night. This one is called Trapped in the Lake of Fire, 1975, age 8. When I was very young, I felt I was sensitive to an unseen world beyond the veil of reality. Such feelings intensified at night and often led to vivid nightmares. At times I was acutely aware of a presence in my room, which I referred to as the man. And he talks about then when he decides to confront the man and to begin drawing. And a lot of the major arcana he began drawing when he was, I think, in his early teens. All right, let me see if I can tip this up a little bit now. There we go. So here, for instance, is the earliest surviving sketch of the Fool from the late 1970s. Here is a colored pencil sketch, age 14, circa 1981. Let me just zoom in on that so you can see that this was what he drew at age 14. That's just, there we go, crazy. Here is another sketch done in 1982 at age 15. So you can see that the characters from the Deviant Moon, you know, and throughout this book he talks about how he lived with these characters as dream people, as imagination people, for all of his childhood. This is the Praying Priestess, which the High Priestess is based upon, which Patrick drew this sketch in 1983, when he was just a teenager. Here is a split-faced priestess with a child, also 1983. Here is the Moon-faced priestess, also 1983, age 16 years old. Look at that. And so throughout the book he talks about his story with each of these major arcana cards as companions, who they were, the types of dreams that he had. Here's one of his earlier sketches, the Insane Nursery, he drew at age 9. And he tells the story about the Insane Nursery and how it comes from one of his earliest past life memories. And so what basically happened is I got this book and I started, just like now, how I can't stop reading it out loud to you. That's what I did. I started reading it out loud to my kids. We got in the car and my son was driving and I started to read it out loud. And I was like, am I boring you guys? And they were like, no, oh my gosh, no, keep reading. And so I did. And I think I ended up reading the first 30-some pages. This is where he talks about some of the photographic sources that end up in the deck, where he got them and why. The story of Boogeyman Island is in here, which is when he was very young. I often caught sight of a cluster of ominous buildings lurking in the distance as I sat in the back of the family car. I remember being awestruck by the towering black smokestacks that rose from the rooftops and penetrated the night sky. When I asked my mother about this place, she told me it was called Boogeyman Island. And at that point, my imagination took over, wondering who lived there and what weird things they might be doing in the darkness. After telling my mother that one day I wanted to go there and look around, she replied by saying, "Those who go there never return." Her words did not discourage me. They only made me want to visit even more. Unknown to me at the time, Boogeyman Island was in reality Pilgrim State Psychiatric Hospital. And he did end up going there many years later to visit a close relative who was in need of help. And by that time, most of the site was in ruins. So you can see how much of this deck actually comes from his own personal experiences, what he perceives as some of his past life experiences, his experiences with dreams and with his imagination, with drawings that he experimented with throughout his childhood and into his teen years, and places that he explored and investigated when he was a young person, and then again when he was an adult. And I will tell you, by the time I think we drove across town, and I think I had got to page maybe 30 by then, and then I kept reading on the way back after my appointment, and isn't that a beautiful picture? And then I understood so much of why everything was what it was in the book. And I actually pretty much decided then, I think I finished reading it that day, and I pretty much decided I was going to order the deck and work with the deck. So I just wanted to read you a little bit about the young witch in the Seven of Wands, because I mentioned her. So look at this. Here is Patrick's daughter was always willing to lend a helping hand when it came to modeling for the deck. So her hand is this hand in this picture. Seven of Wands. That is not the one I wanted to read, but that's a really good one. It's about a girl going through a wood, a child emerging from a thicket after being lost and going through the woods. She has discovered a path that will lead her home and into the arms of her grateful mother. And here's some other illustrations that aren't in the deck, obviously, but that go along with it. Hunted by the beasts in the thicket, boldly confronting the salivating monsters. She's fending off a pack of wild beasts there. Here in this image. During her tribulation through the swampy mist, the girl came across the rotted skeletons of other lost children lying in the mud. They silently beckoned her to give up her struggle and sleep with them in the quagmire forever. But of course the girl does not do that, does she? Oopsie, sorry. This is a very, very heavy book to hold up. It's definitely a coffee table laptop book, you know, for resting on your laptop. While she was astray in the darkness, the child courageously fought back against her fears instead of cowering in the shadows. Night after night she desperately searched for the exit, only to wander around in circles. The coarse weeds and knotted roots of the ground gave her bare feet nasty blisters. But she never stopped to rest. She relentlessly plowed through the bramble, ignoring the sharp thorns that tore her dress and sliced her skin. Refusing to become a victim of her terrible surroundings, the determined child kept moving forward until she eventually broke free from her nightmare. This was actually not the one I was intending to focus on. I wanted to talk about, I think, the Seven of Pentacles. That was what it was, the Seven of Pentacles. But that's okay. Maybe this is the one I needed to read today. Maybe this is the description that someone needed to hear. Anyway, so yeah, this is not an inexpensive book, but boy, it's an amazing book, and it tells the whole story behind the deck. Even if you don't think you would ever want the deck or would use the deck, if you're just interested in art, and you're interested in how artists go about the process of designing things, or what motivates people, or even the story of, you know, one little boy who had nightmares and who was an artist and who had an imagination and who wanted to, or not wanted to, but who did indeed find a way to deal with his fears and his thoughts and his imaginations in a creative way. that then blossomed when he grew up, blossomed into this deck and all the other spin-off decks that we have, and I think we have some more coming this spring. This just might be a book that you want to invest in and read, just for that kind of interest and inspiration of your own, maybe. Isn't that beautiful? That is so much about the Hathaway Cat of Sleep. Okay, thank you very much for watching, and I will see you again very soon.